All right, guys, let's talk about how to deal with the side walls. So you build the front and the back wall. This little thing keeps snapping, sorry. So the thing about the side walls is a couple things that are important. One's got a door and one's got a window. The other one is that you've got a by wall here, or excuse me, a butt wall here, which means that it is butted in between the front wall and the back wall, and it is not going to be the full length, okay, of I can't remember if it's 12 by 20 or 16 by 20, but it's not the full 20 feet, okay. It's shorter than that because it's shorter by 3.5 inches for these studs in the front and 3.5 inches there, so it's actually 7 inches shorter. So let's talk about that in concepts here. So we're going to take a look at second page. It does say we're going to use your 11 by 17 paper because a regular piece of paper won't work. Where you place the door is going to be up to you, but you have to have a header supported by jack studs. And it says that jack studs are 79 inches long. So we're going to deal with that in a moment. Regardless of where you put the door, you still have to make sure that the patterns of studs remains the same. Notice the length of the wall. Okay, it is 16. It's 12 by 16. So we're making it, it is not going to be 16 feet. It's going to be 7 inches shorter. That's important when you do your layout so that we understand where that is. And it is important that your stud pattern actually starts 3.5 inches outside of the wall. Okay, so your stud pattern will begin, and go ahead and make this note that your pattern starts here. Okay, that's really, really, really important that we understand that. The same thing, let's go ahead and make this note on step 5 when we get over here, that it's going to be the same thing over here. Okay, that's important. So we're going to deal with starting that pattern at that point. Now we're going to make both of these templates at the same time. So your job is to make the 2 templates, and then we'll work on actually building it next class. So you're going to need your 11 by 17 paper. Here's the way to have this work. Is we're going to start at a place down in kind of the bottom corner, and here's the way that I would work this out. Is take your ruler and just line it up with the edge of the paper so that you know you're being parallel, and make yourself a line, a construction line. It's going to be kind of faint, okay, going that way, and then line it up with the edge of your paper going up, and this way you're sure you're making a 90-degree angle. Now these are really faint lines. The camera's picking it up a little more than I would like. Okay, so that's going to be your basics of your wall. Now, the wall is going to be 16 feet minus 7 inches long. Okay, so here's how I would do that. Remember, everything is 3/4 of an inch scale. So how I would do that is think, okay, what's 16 feet minus 7 inches would be 15 feet 5 inches, right? Okay, 12 inches a foot. So again, you got to make sure that you know, if you don't know how to use the scale, you're going to have to go back, and I'll reference that video again so you can learn how to use it. So looking at our scale, a little reminder, you haven't used it in a while, so let's remember there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. There are 24 marks, so each one of these is going to stand for 1/2 of an inch. Okay, so let's focus in a little better. There we go. So that means that 5 inches is going to be this 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 marks. There's 5 inches right there. Okay, so I put my 5-inch mark. Let's zoom back out here. So I'm going to put my 5-inch mark right there on the wall and then go to 15. So that way, oh, I can't get quite to 15 because my scale does not reach that far. So that's a problem. Okay. So I guess what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to mark at like 14. Oops, let me get to where my camera can show all of this. Scoot this over. So I made a mark at 14 and then just scooted over my my mark a foot, right? I made another mark. So I'm now again that from this point to this point is 15 feet 5 inches using the 3/4 scale. Now, from here, this is going to get a little tricky because I need to make sure that I'm going to measure this to the edge of my paper on each side from that little point and make sure, that I am, it doesn't really matter what the mark is. What matters is that I know that I'm even on both sides and parallel. That's really important. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a wall that's not square. So I know I was square to the other end of the paper. See, I was even a little bit off. There we go. And now I know I can make that construction line again going up. So now I've got length of the wall, I've got the edge of the wall, I got the edge of the wall, and now I can do my height. My height was the same as the other one, which was 8 feet, I believe. Now here's where you could use one of your templates to just measure what that height is. But I know that my height is 8 feet. And if this doesn't quite work out, so I'm going to make my mark on one side. If this doesn't quite work out exactly with the wall, then, the studs I know are cut to the right length anyway. So there's my 8-foot mark over there. And there's my 8-foot mark over here. And connect those two together. Now, again, you're going to do this twice, right? You're going to do it for, you're going to make one wall that has a window and one wall that has a door. So if you want to do all this at the same time for each one, that would be a good idea. All right. Now, I'm going to pause for just a second. All right, let's just compare and make sure that I'm being on by comparing. I'm comparing one of my templates to make sure it is actually the height that I think it's supposed to be. Okay, it ends up being a little bit shorter. So I'm going to have to make the top plate. Here's how this is going to work. So if you take a look at the distance between lines on these, try and use that same approximation. You don't have to measure because it's really hard to measure 1.5 inches with this tiny little scale. Whoops, not that one. Where's my 3/4 scale? With that guy, because the lines are so fine. So we're just going to approximate this thickness of the board. Now, because I'm not sure why this is a little tiny bit off, but here's how we're going to deal with this. We're going to make our plates, and we're going to make our side pieces next. And go ahead and, again, do this for both walls. So I made 8 feet, right, exactly. But we're going to put the top plate on top of that 8 feet instead of within it. So again, I'm kind of just judging the right size and then, keep that as close as you can get it. And guys, be precise. Let's not have some lines that are 1/4 of an inch apart and some lines that are 1/8 of an inch apart. Be consistent. Now on that bottom one, I'm going to come up from the bottom. Again, it's just to match that template. So again, try and be consistent with the thickness of your okay. And now I'm going to enclose the outsides with the lines I already made, darken them in. And things to be nice and even. and dark so we can see what's going on. And finally, we're going to put the, we're going to put the two studs that are on each end of the wall. So we have the basics of our wall, just like that. Okay, it looks a little trapezoidal because the camera's being weird, but let me see if I can kind of, there we go, cool. All right, so now the next step is very, 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 very important. I hope you're listening because this is going to be critical. I'm going to try and make that, there we go. Hate it when the camera makes things look like they're at an angle when they're not. All right, now here's what's really, really, really important. You listening? Listening? Okay, here we go. You've got to make sure that your 16-inch pattern does not start at the edge of the wall, but starts at where the wall will be, which is 3.5 inches away. So remember, when we're laying this out, I'm going to go over 3.5 inches. So reminder of 3.5 inches here, right? So I'm going to go over that 1, 2, 3.5 inches. I'm going to go over from the edge of the wall, and that's where my pattern is going to start because it's a butt wall. 1, 2, 3.5. Okay, and make myself a little dot right there, and that is where the pattern is going to start. Now I'm lining that up nice and parallel, and make yourself a dashed line that is going to show where this dude is going to start and stop. Okay, now it's going to be the same thing for the other side, but I don't really need to do that because I'm going to work from left to right. Okay, so now we're starting at this point, right? This is the start of my pattern. Okay, not here. So I have to put my studs every 16 inches. Well, remember that 16 inches is going to be 1 foot 4 inches for the first one, 2 foot 8 inches for the second one. It's 4 feet for the third one. It's let's see, 48 plus 1, it's 50. 48 plus 16 is going to be 58, 64, right? So it's going to be 5 feet 4 inches is 64, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's start out with those 4 for now. All right, here we go. So we're going to make the center of where those guys are going to be. So remember, I'm referencing this point. Okay, I can't stress that enough. Some of you are still going to do it wrong and go to the wrong place, but I can't help you. So the first one is at 1 foot plus 4 inches. So I'm going to put the 4-inch mark over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, on that point, and then make my little mark at 1. So I'm going to make a little mark. Don't make it crazy, okay? You don't want the mark to be seen very much. The next one is at 2 feet 8 inches. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches and make a mark at 2. The next one is 4 feet. That one's easy. 4 feet. And the next one is at 5 feet 4 inches. So we're going to slide over to the 4 and make that at the 5. Okay, so we're doing that on the bottom, and we're doing it on the top, and we're doing it on both walls. Now just go ahead and get those 1, 2, 3, 4 marks in there, and then we're going to talk a little bit more. So pause the video, get that done. All right, so you've used your scale. Now, some of you never really learned how to use the scale. If you did, you might have remembered the trick, right? It just so happens that at 3/4 scale, God, that little thing keeps flipping around. I don't know why it keeps doing that, guys. So at 3/4 scale, it just so happens that every 16 inches, matches inches, all right? Okay, so that's not true for any other scale, but it is true for 16. So we can actually, now that I made you do it the long way, we can do it the easy way, okay? And just line up your 0 with that end of the wall, and then just make a mark every inch. Makes it a lot easier, a lot faster. But I wanted you to make sure that you still remembered how to use the scale. Okay, so that's why we're doing that, top and bottom, right? So we're going to make sure that don't forget to start at the 0 and not at the end of the wall. 1, 2, we're going to make little marks and speed up the video if you get it and you don't need me to be talking about it. All right, so we should have that for 2 walls, right? And here's the next step, is you're going to make your studs. So this is kind of tedious, but what you're going to do is put your ruler on just on the outside of those little marks, so because you're going to make 2 lines, 1 on each side, because this is the center of the board, right? That's what 16 inches on center means. So we're going to make a line there and then scoot it over. You can either go through your clear ruler. I'm pretty good at doing that, or you flip the ruler over to the other side. Okay. And again, try to make these all consistently the same thickness, right? We don't be precise. And we're going to do that at the center point of each one of these. Now, don't make this super, super heavy, okay? Because we're going to be erasing some stuff, especially as you get towards the middle. Make your lines. We're going to go darken this in later, but make some of your lines so that they can be erased. So maybe about like that, so that I can go back with my eraser later on, and it's easy enough to erase that stuff. All right, so continue on and make the pattern for your 2 walls. All right, when all's said and done, you got wall 1 and you got wall 2. On this one, I just put a little dot there because that's all I needed to reference from. And this one got away from me a little bit. It's not enough that I'm going to erase it and fix it. All right, so today's job will be to design your wall with the door in it. Next class, we'll do the one with the wall in it and build a little bit. All right, so here's how to deal with the door. Let's make sure we know what we're doing. It says build the wall with a 36 door opening. And what that means is from the inside of the jack stud to the inside of the jack stud is 36 inches. It's the opening of the door, okay? Now, in the real world, if we had a 36-inch door, it would have to be wider than that to fit the thing in and shim it and all that, but we're not worried about that. Jack studs for the doors are 79 inches. Okay, that's going to be important that we understand that. And we need to understand that we're going to have to make sure we know that the header is about 5.5 inches top to bottom. Now for this, you have a little balsa piece that's going to serve as the header, and it might not be exactly those measurements, but we'll talk about fixing that later on. Okay, so next step, decide where you want the door to go. Now, if we're in the classroom, I would have people doing all sorts of different things in different ways and blah, blah, blah. Door is typically not going to be in the very, very middle. That would be kind of weird. It's usually off to one end or the other. I tend to like to work from left to right. And here's the cool thing about walls. Let's say you put the door over here, okay, about where that thing is. If you wanted it to be on the other side, you could just flip the wall over, right? So we can still work from left to right regardless of where it's going to be. So here's the way that I think this works easiest is you're going to do this so that you're using, let's go 2 studs in. We could go all the way to this. Take it back. Let's make the door all the way kind of towards maybe the back or the front, okay? And we'll use this as our king stud. So if you're using that as the king stud, then now your jack stud is going to be 79 inches. So that would be 6 feet 6 inches, right? 72, 6 inches. So it's 6 feet 7 inches, right? So we're going to use our 3/4 scale. I'm going to put it at 6 feet. Now this is at the top of the top plate, right? That's because it's the length of the jack stud. So I've got it at 6. You could do this backwards, either way. And I'm going to make my mark at 6 feet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 inches. Right there is where the top of the jack stud and the bottom of the header is going to be. All right. Now, here's where things get a little tricky. I'm going to go ahead and draw this jack stud just on the left side and where it's going to go on the left. Now I'm going to start this line, making sure I'm nice and straight over here because that's going to represent the bottom of the stud or the header anyway. And then I'm going to draw in my jack stud. Okay. Now, there is the side of the door. Now, here's where it gets tricky. It's a 36-inch door opening, right? So we're going to use our 3/4 scale. We're going to go over 1, 2, 3 feet. This is going to be the inside of the other jack stud. Okay. So that, remember, construction lines are your friends, right? I'm going to line up my, learn what parallel looks like. So you're not doing something weird like that, right? Line it up nice and parallel, measure if you have to. And we're going to, again, draw that line, okay, up there. And this time, instead of, I'm just going to line up, like, check it out. It goes right through the middle of the numbers on these or whatever you need to do, that we're going to make that jack stud. Here's the top of the jack stud. Okay. Now, here's where things kind of get tricky. We're going to erase quite a bit right now because there's going to be nothing but space in here, right? So I'm going to erase some of this stuff. Now I'm not going to erase the bottom plate because we're going to actually build this wall with that bottom plate in place and then cut it out later. Same thing we do in the actual, well, I'm going to go up a little bit more than this, not all the way because there's going to be these little cripples up there. Those cripples are going to be tricky. And now I can finish where the bottom of the header is going to be. Top of the jack stud, okay, all the way across. And here's where we've got the inside edge of the jack stud, which is 3 feet away from the other. Let's make sure I did that right again. Yep, okay, 3 feet. Move this over a little bit. And now I'm going to draw the edge of my king stud, which is right next to, so there's my jack stud, and now we're going to draw in the king stud. All right, so we have king stud, jack stud, king stud, okay? All right, now let's finish drawing in our header. Our header was 5.5 inches, so you have to find where that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. Okay, is right about there. I'm going to erase a little bit more so I'm not fighting myself on this. By the way, if you don't have one of these good erasers, this is a good thing to have. Your pencil is probably going to smudge things all up. Pink eraser works well too, but there's nothing better than these, white square erasers. They work really well. By the way, I should have said this at the beginning. Notice I'm not drawing with my scale. I'm drawing with the ruler because the scales sometimes get beat up on the edge. All right, so the header is going all the way across from king stud to king stud. So now we have our jack studs holding up the header, and finally I'm going to finish off these things that are called cripples up here. The cripples have to be there because there has to be something to nail to in the 16-inch pattern. Now, notice that I'm going to darken these guys in a little bit before I move on, and so I can see what's going on. I think the other ones are okay. You can see them. Now, notice that the door is close to this, but that's the way it's supposed to be because you still have to have your 16-inch pattern. You have the end of the wall, 16, 16, 16, 16, 16, and so on and so forth. So that is the way that it's supposed to be. All right, so we've got a door opening, and again, this part will be cut out later on after we install the wall and to make that door opening complete. All right, guys, we'll talk about what to do with the next wall later on. Oh, last thing. So I hope you didn't sign off. Is I want you to find a pin, okay, and just to keep everybody honest, sign across your across that thing just like that, so that when you take your picture, it's your wall, and just I'm keeping honest people honest. All right, that is the last thing. Hope it worked out. See you next time. Have a good day.